It takes us right into the second one, of course, which is the essentials for reporters. For those of you watching after the fact or just hopping onto the call, our guest today in the house is Senior Manager of Search Strategy and Content Distribution, which is a lot to fit onto a business card, Mr. David Stone. And we're going to walk through some really great examples of headlines and the important things. And I think that the biggest message that I try to get to people when we talk SEO, David and I have talked about this before. I'm now a 5 out of 10. I want to be a 9. I was a 4 before talking to David. Is really, this is just trying to get more eyeballs on reporter stuff, right? I mean, that's the key to this whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, the part I love about my job, I love SEO, but I love when breaking news or big stories happen at the local newspaper and we beat the competition. That's what fires me up. That's what gets me excited, is when I help somebody, a reporter, someone creating content, get more eyeballs. Ultimately, I want more people to read your stuff.
Awesome stuff. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to talk about headlines, why it matters to have good SEO terms, fixing some problems, and watching some traffic walk in. And let's start with your quizzes.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a quiz that I like to call You Two Are an SEO Expert. It's not just me. You're actually an SEO expert because, believe it or not, Google has trained you how to search. So here's the headline, the title tag, and the source code. I'm asking you for 3 to 5 seconds. What query or what do you think I typed into Google to get this result?
Concerts in Austin.
Austin concerts. Yes. So I typed in Austin concerts exactly, and you can see actually the top 3 searches match the query, front loading the headline or page title, Austin concerts exactly. The next one. So this,
this is the Tom Brady one. See, this is why I have to do things in old school. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you were to guess this was Tom Brady, you would be right. But there is a third word that I put in this, and again, when I've showed this to people, I actually asked them in person, and I asked them, what was the third word? They will often get it. And take a second, see if you can get it, and then I'm going to tell you what it is.
I know what it is.
What is it, Tim?
Big comeback.
That's right, Tom Brady comeback. So basically, 3 words that I searched, and it sounds so simple, but actually Google's really into this. And the reason for that is because Google is trying to match the best content to a user search. And the headline still has a premium value as to what that piece of content is about. It's really important to them. It's so important to them that they actually talk about it in their support documentation. I was surprised to see this when you passed this along. Comes right from them. This is a support document for webmasters from Google. Create descriptive page titles. Titles are critical. That's their words, Google's words, to giving users a quick insight into the content of a result and why it's relevant to their query. And this is what I call a big old hint. It's often the primary piece of information used to decide which result to click on. I think this is so fascinating because you have so many old school editors who want to get so clever with their headlines. And in fact, that sometimes completely defeats the purpose when it comes to SEO, right? I mean, this has to be a very simplistic approach. Figure out what people will be looking for and make sure that that's prominent in the very first few words of the headline. Literal descriptive text is how people search. That's correct. And this is my favorite thing that you've ever said to me. Well, and the reason for that is insert really old SEO joke that I still laugh at, and that's simply because the best place to hide a dead body is page 2 of Google search results. If you really want something not to be found, put it on page 2, because almost 75% of clicks at one time came from, let's say, in the top 5 positions in Google, and by the time you're at the bottom of page 1, you're getting very few clicks, and then as you roll to page 2, that's where you hide the dead bodies. Interesting. So let's get into some examples. This was one from here in Austin. Yeah, so this is an oldie but a goodie for me, because this is one of the first ones when I first went to work at the Austin American-Statesman in 2013. Wendy Davis, who was running for office, I believe that was governor, but I may be wrong about that. But a big story about Wendy Davis abortion when she went public with that, it happened. And Debbie Hyatt, our editor, she came and she said, "Hey, I don't see this in Google. Can you take a look?" So I took a look at it, and I'm going to share with you what the story had become. So everybody was searching for
Wendy
Davis, and even Wendy Davis abortion. And in fairness, in fairness to them, they actually did have Wendy Davis in the original headline, and then the story changed, so therefore the headline changed. But we actually went from, let's say, within the top 3 ranking, actually to off of page 2, because Dewhurst declares abortion bill dead, blames unruly mob. Now, again, this is something that would look really good in print.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not how people search. And so what was, you can go to the next slide. This is, and as an example, Google Trends. This is a free tool. If you've not used it, I'm sure many of you know about it. Google.com/trends. But you can actually see what searches are trending over well over 10 years, 5 years, and then even real time. This is a really good breaking news tool because you can actually compare trends in real time data. But what you see is, everybody was searching for Wendy Davis, and no one was searching, or almost no one was searching, for David Dewhurst.
And there it is. I mean, big numbers.
So, and on that story, 15% of traffic came from search. So that would be under what we would typically expect for the Statesman. So what was the problem? The right story. They did a great job with the story, honestly, but the wrong headline. The headline changed, and that created some issues in Google. And when that happens, Google is a frowny face.
Google looks sad. I was going to say, okay, well, here's another example.
So here's and this is something that then we began to do. We began to basically, fix this problem and really focus when these stories happens to make sure that we get what people are looking for. So you probably remember the
Twin Peaks, sure.
Yeah, Texas-style shootout outside of Austin in a town called Waco, the Waco biker gang shootout. And here's an image of a gallery that we had.
Which, for those of you who've never been this way, this really is like a strip mall in the middle of like suburbia. I still can't believe that happened where it happened. But anyway.
Really, really just crazy story. But something to think about is this local story becomes regional, then becomes just flat out national. And that's something to think about, as that happens in your local market, how you can get in front of that. And I'll be talking more about that as well in some of my other session. Here we go. Waco biker gang shootout. This again, you see CNN, you see New York Times, and then right below us you see the Statesman. The goal is never to rank number one. Honestly, if I knew how to tell every one of you to rank number one for every single story you put out, quite frankly, I'd be a very rich man.
Gatehouse wouldn't be able to afford you, David.
That's correct. Google has 95 billion reasons to keep that secret. And they don't tell me all of that. I just have to really work through this and study this stuff. But you see, there we are on page 1. A lot of people are searching for, they're asking themselves, this is how people often ask themselves subconsciously before they search. What happened? Where did it happen? Who did it happen to? Mm-hmm. And so as this information begins to trickle out, into the knowledge base, people begin adding this to their search. So Waco biker shooting, here you go. You see this on page 1. Then you can go to the next slide, Tim. Banditos biker gang. So then the knowledge was, hey, it's the Banditos were involved, as well as this other group, Cossacks. So where did it happen? It happened in Waco. What happened? There was a biker gang shooting, and who was involved? The Banditos and the Cossacks. And you're looking at basically one story showing up for multiple of those searches because they did a really good job of optimizing for what people would be searching for in Google. And here you can see, something's been trending along, bumping in Google, and then it hits 100 in Google Trends because it became a really big deal. And we want to meet the user's query with our content. But Tomcat's here. He says, hey, David, it's nice but show me the search traffic. So just showing you a little wrap up on that. The content from that did 2 200,000 plus page views and 32% from search traffic. So basically, comparing to Wendy Davis, we more than doubled the amount of search traffic volume that we got to that story than we did the Wendy Davis story. And I don't know if y'all know this, but anytime you do good SEO, it's a fact that small babies clap for you.
Oh, that's nice. See?
So here's something that happened last week that I also wanted to share because this is a little wrinkle. This happened with Sarasota, and I talked to Alan there in Sarasota. So, Alan, if you're out there, thanks for letting me use this, sir. I appreciate it. But this was the original story because we're talking about headlines, and that is certainly one ranking factor or one factor within how to rank content. But there are numerous, headlines being one of the most important ones. Actually, Google is on the record of saying within their 3 ranking factors, the content itself is a ranking factor, of which I just showed you. The headline, i.e. the page title, is very important. The content, links, and then RankBrain, which is something that's very new within Google, and I'm not even going to pretend that I even know what that means because very few people do.
Okay.
But so looking at the content, they actually, Sarasota did a good job of breaking a story. And you can see the headline on the left, and I'm showing you that because the story was about Melissa Howard. Melissa Howard was the #1 impression getting keyword for that particular article. But you notice she is her name is not in the headline, but notice it's in the subhead and in the first graph, which is actually a good thing to think about within your content as well. This works well for a lot of, let's say, smaller stories that don't get national, but putting that person's name, because we think they're not prominent when in fact they may know people in the community
Sure.
that are going to look for them. So that was something that I think was really beneficial. And also, I will say on that, an important part in Google for breaking news is be first and be fast. And so I want to give a hat tip to Sarasota for being first and being fast. And I'll actually share more next week about why I think all this unfolded the way it did. But here's another story where they did get the headline with the name in the headline. And then to the right, I'm showing you some of the stories that they created around this story from Sarasota. And also note, when you match a user's query, you'll see that description, and I highlighted them. It will be bold. So anytime you match a user's query, if you put it in the page title, it will also, or the headline. I'm using page title, headline, and title tag because that's just SEO terminology. But it will also be bold in what we call the SERP description. For your CMS, it is being pulled from that first paragraph, first graph, or the subhead. So thinking about getting it in there can be beneficial.
And it's funny because people say, I just used her first name in the last story. That doesn't mean you shouldn't keep using it. Keep putting that first name in there.
That's correct. And so Google provides me data, but there's a lag. It's like several days. So this story was just happening. So I haven't got to do the full wrap up on this. But what I did want to share with you regarding headlines and how they say it's one of the most useful things that make people engage with your content. If you look at story in 1 and 2, this is pulled directly again from Google Search Console where I can go see how stuff is performing. You'll notice because they did such a great job of basically riding that wave of impressions up as people began to search, that story did get the most traffic as of a few days ago when I checked. You can see it got the most impressions. But what I want to point out to you is look at the click-through rate. So this
7.
Go ahead.
No, it's 7 on the first one, but then down to 12 and 14.
That's right. And the difference in those stories is the headlines that I just showed you. That is the difference in click-through rate for Melissa Howard to those 2 stories. So I don't want to say that the email story didn't do well because, in fact, it did, and they did a lot of things right. But if you look at the second story that went out, they actually matched the user's query, and when you match the user's query, they will click on it more often.
Interesting. Okay.
And if we can go back, I wanted to read there. I linked to something Google has actually talked about. Previous work on click models is also important for our study. A click model is a probabilistic graphical model. There's some words for you to chew on when you go home. Used to predict users' clicks and in some cases even user satisfaction. It is believed that click-through rate is a ranking factor. It's something that they observe, they talk about. It's if you want some light late night reading, go read some of their patent work, how they build these probabilistic search models. And I know that's using terminology that I personally don't use too often, but it is something they think about in Google.
All right.
And just to show you how some of the big national publishers do, you can see Washington Post, CNN, they all reported on this. Again, good job to Sarasota for beating them to the punch.
Nice.
Because that's really important for let's say a small to mid-sized paper when the big dogs are going to come in.
And they are coming in.
And they are coming in. They will come in at some point, and it's hard to compete. But look at Washington Post and CNN. Look how they're front-loading what they know people are looking for.
Interesting. Okay, give us some takeaways. These are interesting things. And like you said, users are searching for 3 things.
For people, places, and things. What happened? Who did it happen to? And where did it happen? When did it happen? Those sorts of things. So a couple things regarding that. Unique 55 to 60 character page title, again, headline for every page. The reason for that, if you go over that, it will ellipsis in Google on page 1 or just on Google in general. That's not to say if you go over that, Google doesn't understand it. They do, and I've tested this. But at least make sure that you're front-loading the most important terms in that headline so it doesn't get cut off. Information-rich versus witty. People search for specifics. As I showed you, you've been trained to search. You are an SEO expert, so think about what you would search for. That's probably going to be pretty close to what others are.
Versus witty is my favorite part.
Yeah.
I get it, but it's like I said, there are so many old school editors who that's what they were taught for so long is make sure that headline is witty.
And it is different, and I understand it and respect it for print, but it's just not how people search when it comes to digital content.
Right.
Most important information first. Again, front-loading the person's name or the specific information versus putting it at the end. Page title does influence click-through rate and possibly rankings.
And also, a couple more tips, takeaways.
Use full names, Clark Kent versus Clark, because there's a few one-name people, Trump, Obama, LeBron,
right?
People like that.
Schmidt.
But Schmidt,
wait,
Stone, but by and large, people search full names. And think focus phrases. What's the thing? How to protest Austin property taxes versus just putting property taxes. And location is important. Austin Festival versus Festival.
I have a quick question from before. In YouTube, do keywords do anything?
So for YouTube video, we're talking about video optimization. Mm-hmm. So you want to think about what your title is. You want to think about the descriptions. And then within YouTube specifically, you want to think about your tagging, which is keyword tagging. And I like them to be tightly focused. Think about what you want to build authority about over time. And so tagging does work within YouTube. There is an old, I don't know if this is maybe where this question generated from. There is an old meta tag within source code called the meta keyword tag. It was an old school back in 2010. Mm-hmm. It was like you wanted to rank for fuzzy kittens, so you would put fuzzy kitten, white kitten, black kitten, mm-hmm. and you would just like basically spam your source code with those. That is defunct. It doesn't work anymore. But in YouTube, just using, you don't need to put it more than twice, but like breaking news or Austin news or something, whatever the tagging is, it can be useful.
And one question, too, seems like that Statesman story was older than the top 3. Maybe a takeaway is to continue to update. Is that part of the key of this?
That's a fantastic question. I'll be covering that next week. QDF, I'll drop this out here. Here's another weird phrase. QDF, query deserves freshness, or fresh factor is a ranking in the Google algorithm, and we've actually done some fun stuff with that I'm going to share.
By the way, thank you for calling 2010 the old school days. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll send you the link to the video. We'll send you the link to the slides. And, of course, you should sign up for next week's session. David Stone, thank you very much. We'll do this again next week, okay?
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.